Devil's Hole is a geologic formation located within the Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, in Nye County, Nevada, Southwestern United States. Devil's Hole a detached unit of Death Valley National Park is habitat for the only naturally occurring population of the endangered Devil's Hole pupfish. The 40-acre unit is a part of the Ash Meadows complex, an area of desert uplands and spring-fed oasis designated a National Wildlife Refuge in 1984. Description: Devil's Hole is a geothermal pool within a limestone cavern in the Amargosa Desert in the Amargosa Valley of Nevada, east over the Amargosa Range and Funeral Mountains from Death Valley. Its waters are a near constant salinity and temperature. Devil's Hole branches into deep caverns at least 300 feet deep from an opening at the surface that is approximately 6 by 18 feet. According to geologists, the caves were formed over 500,000 years ago. The pool has frequently experienced activity due to faraway earthquakes, which have been likened to extremely small-scale tsunamis. Devil's Hole is the only natural habitat of the Devil's Hole pupfish, which thrives despite the hot, oxygen-poor water. It is an IUCN Red List endangered species. The enclosing cave is occasionally used as a roost for barn owls, which tend to increase dietary growth via guano. Ash Meadows is the discharge point for a groundwater system extending over 100 miles to the northeast. 30 seeps and springs bring to the surface fossil water which entered the groundwater system thousands of years ago. Ash Meadows is home to 26 species of endemic plants and animals, including 3 other endangered fish and 7 threatened plants. Tsunami in the desert: Devil's Hole is a window into this vast aquifer and an unusual indicator of seismic activity around the world. Large earthquakes as far away as Japan, Indonesia and Chile have caused the water to slosh in Devil's Hole like water in a bathtub. Waves may splash as high as 2 meters up the walls, sweeping clean the shallow shelf so important to the pupfish. Devil's Hole pupfish: earlier pluvial periods allowed colonization of present sites. Subsequent xeric conditions served to isolate the aquatic habitats, with the result that the inhabiting organisms have differentiated and evolved into the relict species found today. The Devil's Hole pupfish have been isolated 10,000 to 20,000 years, longer than any other in the Death Valley system. Devil's Hole itself is a water-filled cavern cut into the side of a hill. The cavern is over 500 feet deep and the bottom has never been mapped. Devil's Hole provides its resident pupfish with conditions of constant temperature and salinity, unlike the fluctuating environments of many other pupfish. Although pupfish have been found as deep as 66 feet, the fish forage and spawn exclusively on a shallow rock shelf near the surface, feeding on the algae and items found there. The Devil's Hole pupfish is considered an annual species, with the historic population fluctuating between 100 to 200 in winter and 300 to 500 in late summer. Research indicates that pupfish population numbers respond primarily to the amount of algae present on the shelf. The algal growth depends, in turn, on the amount of solar radiation the shelf receives and the concentration of nutrients in the water. Finally, recent evidence suggests that nutrient availability is highest when the cave is used by barn owls as a roosting nesting site. The owls increase the pool nutrient levels by casting nutrient-rich pellets into the water. Conservation efforts: the history of conservation efforts for the Devil's Hole pupfish is instructive. The Devil's Hole unit was added to Death Valley National Monument by presidential proclamation in 1952. 10 years later the NPS installed a hydrograph in the hole to monitor water levels. Subsequently, the hole was fenced after 2 divers drowned in its water. In 1967 the Devil's Hole pupfish was officially listed as an endangered species. New threats: that same year saw a farming corporation amass 12,000 acres in the Ash Meadows area. By 1968 the hydrograph had begun to register a decline as large-capacity wells were drilled and pumped in Ash Meadows. The alarming water drop threatened to expose the critical spawning feeding shelf and precipitated the formation of 2 groups to work for protection of Devil's Hole, the Desert Fishes Council in the West, and the Desert Pupfish Task Force in Washington, D.C. By 1970, drastic conservation efforts had been undertaken, Refugia populations were established, and a floating artificial shelf, artificially lighted, was suspended in Devil's Hole to substitute for the partially exposed natural rock shelf. The fish never used the artificial shelf. In August 1971, a federal court issued an injunction to halt further pumping, that threatened to completely expose the natural shelf. Further litigation finally resulted in the landmark Supreme Court decision of 1976. It recognized the prior water right of Devil's Hole vis-à-vis its designation as part of a national monument. The permanent injunction did not halt pumping, but limited it to a level which guaranteed sufficient water to inundate the natural rock shelf. Recovery. In their Devil's Hole Pupfish Recovery Plan of 1980, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service designated as essential habitat about 21,000 acres where the groundwater most influenced the water level in the hole. One of the identified goals of the recovery plan was to maintain the aquifer at such levels that the population fluctuates from 300 in winter to 700 to 900 in late summer. The water source for the Devil's Hole pupfish was now adequately secured, but the remainder of Ash Meadows was as yet unprotected. A land development company bought the Ash Meadows land from the Farm Corporation in 1977, planning to subdivide the area into 30,000 residential lots. This new threat to the Ash Meadows region prompted California Senator Alan Cranston to introduce legislation in 1981 which would establish a desert pupfish national wildlife refuge. Furthermore, in 1982 the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service emergency listed as endangered two more of the fish species in Ash Meadows, thereby conferring protection to all three levels of pools in the area. Finally, in 1984 Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge was established by Congress. The Nature Conservancy bought the bulk of the land from the development company and resold it to the USFWS. By 1986 the USFWS had drafted a recovery plan for the entire Ash Meadows area, including Devil's Hole. A mysterious decline. Starting in the mid-1990s, the Devil's Hole pupfish population began what was to become a severe decline. Studies have been undertaken to better understand energy flow in the system, water chemistry, pupfish genetics, organisms living in the water, and other factors. Although the decline unregistered trademark S cause has not yet been determined, knowledge of the Devil's Hole ecosystem has been greatly extended. Efforts continue to save this species that has existed for 10,000 years. See also, pupfish, Cyprinodon, genus, Amargosa pupfish station. References. Landwehr, J. M. and Winograd, I. J., 2012, Devil's Hole, Nevada a primer, U.S. Geological Survey Fact Sheet 2012 3021, 6p, available online at http, pubs USGS.gov 2012/3021. External links, Devil's Hole. Geographic Names Information System. United States Geological Survey. Retrieved August 10, 2009. The Southwestern Naturalist, Pupfish Populations,